Welcome back, everyone, to Goody and Johnny Bone with the Movies. Tonight we're bringing you episode 35 of our show, and tonight we are going to be reviewing Raiders of the Lost Ark. We actually just saw this at a drive-in theater in Bellport, Long Island at the Gateway Playhouse. It's one of the only ways right now anyone can really watch a movie outside of your own house, since the movie theaters are all shut down. Luckily in New York, here on Long Island, we've had quite a few opportunities to watch an outdoor film at different parking lots. Malls are doing this. I know playhouses around Long Island are doing this. And because it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, we really couldn't pass this up.
Yeah, I agree.
I've never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark on the big screen. Obviously, I have it home. But this was a great opportunity to go see that. I know you've seen this a bunch of times on the big screen.
Yeah.
So we are going to bring you our nice little review. Before we do that, we're going to get to our little drink of the night.
Yeah. I am drinking for the first time a Samuel Adams Sam 76 Refreshing Lager.
And it sounds like it'll be his last time.
Yeah, probably my last time. I was never a big fan of Sam Adams, but this seemed kind of cool, the Sam 76 Refreshing Lager. But as I poured it into my glass, I got the hints of all the citrus aroma, and I'm like, oh, this is a fruit beer. I'm like, not a big fan of the fruit beer. So now, fruit beer and Sam Adams all put in one?
Yeah, but you've never tried all the different Sam Adams. And there were quite a few that were actually really good.
Well, this one is so fruity, you don't even taste like that. Every Sam Adams beer has like that core Sam Adams flavor, which I'm not a big fan of, but this is really, really, it's like I got a whole orchard going on in my mouth.
That's good. It's like a little surprise.
Oh my goodness.
And for me, I'm drinking a Blue Point Summer Ale.
But I can drink anything once. At the end of the day.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Listen, we hope all you guys actually grab a drink and join us in when you're watching this, or if you're listening to this on our podcast.
Oh yeah.
Just to kind of drink along with us. Give us a listen. Give us a watch. Please, guys, leave some comments to show us some support. We're still trying to grow this channel and grow our audience. Let us know if there's any particular movies that you want us to review. If you have something that you're passionate about, we have no problem almost taking requests, so to speak.
Sure.
In this pandemic that we have, since we can't go to the movies, we're kind of limited to really what's going to be out. That's why we're kind of going to be doing some retro reviews probably over the next few recordings that we have.
Which is actually kind of fun. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah, we get to kind of catch up a little bit, or go back to some of the things that we've either spoken about previously, but we never actually did a review of. Or kind of just watch something that we haven't seen in a while and share our thoughts on it.
So again, like everybody, Chris had mentioned this earlier. It's basically, we're in a COVID-19 world, and I'm sure everybody's watching a lot of movies at home, but everybody still has that urge to go out, to see a movie, and all the movie theaters are closed. So a lot of these drive-in movies are popping up again, which is actually, even for someone like me. It's a kind of fun and nostalgic. I mean, I've been to drive-in movies in the past, but many, many, many years ago. Drive-in movies was a big thing in the 70s. I lived in Rosedale growing up, and there was a drive-in movie where Sunrise Cinemas, which is no longer there now, used to be. And the last drive-in movie I think I ever saw was in Westbury, when there was a drive-in movie in Westbury. I actually saw The Mask there, which is
Jim Carrey's a mess.
Yeah. But but those were actually really big. Like the normal drive-in movie theater from back in the day was a much bigger screen.
Yeah.
Now, so what's happening now is you have all these I don't know if they're portable or inflatable.
Some of them are.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
But the one that we went to at the Gateway Playhouse, I think that's a more permanent structure. I think that has always been there. It seems like because they have the parking lot, set up, and it's a good size. It's a decent size.
Screen. Oh yeah.
Yeah. To me, it should have been a little bit higher, so that way it's no matter who's parked in front of you, you can always see the entire screen. Because this time we got behind a car that was a little bit on the big side, and the bottom of the left bottom of the screen was shrouded from us the whole time. But it was actually very interesting, and this is my second time at this place. I was there a couple weeks ago, me and my wife, to see Sunset Boulevard from 1950, which is a classic, Hollywood black and white film. Gloria Swanson, William Holden, 4-star, really good movie. But when we went, there was only maybe 15 cars there. We got there around half an hour before the show, and we were the first ones there. So when we were figuring out this one, like, whoa, what time should we get there? Like, oh, it's Raiders, We should at least get there half an hour early.
Yeah.
Well, we got there half an hour early, and we were
Or at least 20 cars deep at that point.
at least 20 cars deep.
Yeah.
It was, we actually wound up getting a good spot, and there were people definitely coming in behind us.
Yeah.
But basically, I think it comes down to the more popular the movie, the much more earlier.
And this was definitely a very popular film, and it was but it was nice to see. It was nice to kind of see people out supporting these playhouses. And just getting out for a night.
They have a whole lineup of films coming up. Like what they did was the previews.
They actually had previews, which was cool.
The previews for the movie were movies that they were planning on showing in the drive-in and were coming up.
They had like 3 or 4 films that they previed with the dates that they were gonna play them over the next coming weeks.
It's kind of fun. We brought our own food. They actually don't sell any food there, so you bring your own. So we made our own popcorn. We brought sodas. We brought candy. It was a
nice night at the movies.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good.
So, the first movie in the Indiana Jones franchise, thanks to George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. Now I was thinking about how often I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark on the big screen. I saw it at least once, if not twice, when it came out back in '81 in the theaters, and I actually remember like scenes from that movie seeing for the first time. It was such an impressive film at that time, and for a kid it was great. But I distinctly remember leaving that theater with my brother and a bunch of my friends, and intense debate ensued as to whether or not that movie was better than Star Wars. And I can tell you right now, it was an even split. Half the people thought it was better than Star Wars, and the other half were like, no way, nothing beats Star Wars, this and that. At the end of the day, I consider both of those movies 4-star films. Star Wars obviously is greater in the historical canon for in film history. It was more impactful for sure. But Raiders, I think, is one of the absolute best movies of the '80s. And for me personally, I actually, in terms of favorite films, Raiders ranks a little bit higher than Star Wars for me. I think both of them are in my top 10, but Raiders might be like number 5 or number 6, and Star Wars is probably number 8, 7 or 8. But yeah, Raiders is one of my all-time favorites. So I had seen it when it came out, and then I think I saw it on re-release sometime in the mid-'80s. Actually wound up seeing it in East Meadow with my dad before I lived in Levittown, I think. And that might have been it. I think since then I've only seen it on TV.
I think the first time I saw that film, I was probably like 5, 6 years old. It was probably like one of the first times I saw it. And I remember that the one distinct thing I remember seeing that film, and I still get this feeling every time I watch it, is I want a fedora and I want a whip. Because that to me was like the coolest thing at the time, like watching Harrison Ford have his hat on and just crack that whip the way that he does.
Well, I want a Karen Allen.
And to me, I just it's such an enjoyable film. It's one of the best adventure films I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The direction, Johnny and Mo and I were talking like while we're watching this film, just certain shots that are beautifully done by Spielberg and how he put this film together.
Yeah, just well-crafted, thought-out shots. Not just random things, or just not just the same distance from the action or camera angle, just like a static shot where you're just watching stuff happen. With the constant, and not super duper fast editing either. It wasn't like just like each. To me, it was really a work of art because every scene is just so well crafted and thought out, and some really distinctive shots.
There was such a there's you said this when probably like 30 minutes into the film, and you were saying how well paced this film was.
Yeah.
And I think that's really well said. The film, it never feels slow, and it never feels like it's too fast.
Rushed.
You always feel like you are where you're supposed to be.
And it never feels like there's too much going on at once.
No.
There are certain kind of hyperkinetic scenes, in the beginning when all the spears are flying around, we're stealing the idol. But for the most part, the movie is like each scene is happening at a certain pace, and everything is given the right amount of attention and detail.
Right.
And the music in this movie,
John Williams again.
John Williams' music in this movie is perfect, because the music is interwoven with every shot. It is a part of the movie. It's a part of the scene. You know, it's not just background music or incidental.
But I think that's one of Williams' strengths, is that when he crafts, and I know other composers do this well, but I feel like John Williams really does this well. He might be the best composer to do this. So when his music hits, it's a part of the movie. Without that music, it is a completely different film. And I know you can say that about I know you can say that about almost music in general with film, but John Williams's themes in particular with the film itself and how it's almost identified by the music.
Oh yeah.
In certain aspects. To me, I feel like nobody does it better.
Yeah, aside from like, I almost want to say like, not like almost like catchphrases, but like the catchphrase music, like the theme that, you know, constantly goes throughout.
Indy's theme.
Yeah, Indy's theme.
Yeah.
And it, you know, but the movie's not just that, because each, you know, all the, even, you know, the lows and the highs and the in-betweens of all the music, it is so well timed with the action on the screen. Everything is,
it's just balanced.
Everything that's happening in the score is enunciated by what's happening on the screen. Yeah. You know, it's, you know, and not a lot of people can do that right. I think back in the day that used to be, I think more so the case. I think the score was really more delicately handled than a lot of movies today, where it's just kind of thrown together. But you watch that, like if you watch that movie with the, if you were able to mute the music, it just completely changes everything. You know, the music is absolutely necessary.
John Williams' music, and I do enjoy listening to soundtracks. So to me, his music, you could almost not even watch the film, but just listening to that music, you can visualize what's going on from just the music itself. Like it's almost like you know the scenes. If you know the film well enough, you could almost picture the scenes in your head as you're listening to the music. And I don't know anyone else that does it as well as he does.
Oh, and for anyone out there that's hears me coughing and thinking that, oh my God, Johnny Moore's got COVID-19. It's not COVID-19.
Thank goodness.
I had a shot right before we started filming that went down the wrong pipe and kind of burned out my trachea and everything. So
we were gonna.
I'm just coughing it through, so that's what it's from, not from being sick.
We were gonna do a little, you know, toast to everybody out there, but it went down the wrong pipe, and
it almost killed me.
And we were like, okay, we're gonna edit that out and not put that in.
Yeah, which just goes to show you that, you know, 20, 30 years from now, when we don't care what anybody says, we're gonna, you know, unleash Goody and Johnny Moe with the movies, unedited, raw, and you know that footage will be on there, and that'll be fun to see.
We'll do a super duper deleted scene cut. I thought the casting in this is fantastic. I mean, obviously Harrison Ford having such a big showing as Han Solo, and his connection with George Lucas really carried him over into this film. Obviously, we all know that Tom Selleck was supposed to be Indiana at first, right, but that would have made a completely different film.
Oh yeah, and this movie came out a year after Empire Strikes Back.
Empire came out in '81. So you know,
so that and
Harrison was at like his
Harrison
high.
Ford in Empire Strikes Back was very, you know, iconic. He was like not just a flash in the pan. With Star Wars, he was coming back for Empire, and he was very, you know, really pivotal in Empire. So I think, you know, seeing him in Raiders of the Lost Ark the following year, you know, it's like, whoa, you know, two major roles, major franchises,
big time.
And in this one, he's the star.
Yep.
I don't know that I would quite say that Harrison Ford is the star of Star Wars.
No, because to me, it's more of an ensemble cast.
Yeah, it is. It's more of an ensemble, and he's definitely in there with, you know, Luke Skywalker.
With Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. Absolutely. Yeah. And then I love Karen Allen. When we were watching this, Karen Allen comes on screen when, you know, her first scene when they were in Nepal, and I think that she is by far the best out of all the Indiana Jones female cast members that they had on, compared to Temple of Doom and Last Crusade.
And even compared to her role in the fourth movie, which I didn't think was that good. Everybody was horrible in that movie.
I do, yeah. I mean, she was so well written in this. Such a strong character.
Yeah.
Loved her interactions at the bar itself, and then how she deals with Indy right off the bat, and then just how she presents throughout the film.
Yeah, she's like a rough and tumble type girl.
Yeah.
She can handle herself, and she's not a blonde, which almost seems like who cares? She could be anything. But like when you look
the next two films,
you look at the next two films, and you're dealing with a blonde actress, and these. They almost give off the impression like they don't want to get their hands dirty, because they're the beauty queens and they're pretty and they're goofy. Whereas Karen Allen will be fighting right alongside.
She got right into it. Yeah, the way they wrote Kate Capshaw's character, and I forget the German the German character from
Right.
Last Crusade, but yeah, they were not written like they wrote Karen Allen. That's for sure.
Yeah, like basically, I think Indiana Jones would always have to save those women, and whereas with Karen Allen, it could go either way.
Right.
She could save him.
Yeah. No, and I really enjoyed Karen in this, and then John Rhys-Davies, I think is great.
Yeah.
And this is Sala. I think he obviously comes back in The Last Crusade, and I thought that was great for him to come back in that film. I missed him in The Temple of Doom, which is my least favorite out of. Oh no, that's not true. I'm sorry. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is my least favorite, followed by Temple of Doom. So.
And for anybody who doesn't know who John Rhys-Davies is, he was Gimli.
He also played Gimli in Lord of the Rings.
One of the Rings trilogy for Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that he's recognizable in that role.
It's so different because he also plays Treebeard also.
Oh really? He plays Treebeard.
He plays Treebeard too. Yeah, and Gimli. Yeah. So, definitely a completely different role for him.
So now when the movie starts, there's one of the people in his group is a very young role for. He doesn't look all that young.
No, but he's very unknown.
Yes, for Alfred Molina, he plays the guy that goes into. What do you want to call it? The cave?
The
crypt or whatever.
Right, with Indy.
With Indy, who kind of winds up betraying him, but winds up getting killed. But it's the way the movie starts off is actually really good. The very opening shot, I think, because what's the Paramount?
Paramount, yeah. But they do that with all the indie films.
Yeah, they have I think the Paramount opening shot for all Paramount movies is this mountain,
right?
And then it fades away to the mountain that Indiana Jones and his group are like marching.
Right.
Anyway, and you see it in the background. And you don't see Indiana Jones right away, you only see his back. And they slowly reveal him to you when he finally turns around to crack his whip and for the traitor. But it's a really good open.
It's a great introduction.
It's a great open.
It's a great intro to Indy because at first you don't hear him talk that much.
Yeah.
You just kind of see his actions at first, and then once they go into the cave portion, the crypt, to grab the idol is like the first time like he starts to like talk a little bit, but it's such a tense moment.
So when they go into the cave, it's actually a really fun shot because there's so many different sequences to it. It's got like all these scenarios. It's got the traps.
It's got the booby traps involved.
It's got all the booby traps. And one of my favorite shots early on in the film is when he's getting ready to take the idol off, and he's got the bag of sand, and he's hefting it, and he feels like there's too much sand in it. He's got it, and he takes some sand out of the bag, and it starts to run through his fingers, and they just show the shot from behind him, and all you kind of really see is like the side of his body and the hand and the sand going through, and the idol in behind it. And it's a great shot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these, throughout the film where they just present these, uncommon angles, and it just adds so much flavor. So, to me, and they're well thought out. And I think Spielberg totally knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah.
He just,
No, I wonder what all the storyboards would be like looking at this and how they set up these scenes. Because I think, like you said, I think Spielberg had this really well thought out. And just the visuals, the style that he went with to me was a little different because I mean he had great close-ups, he had great like pullbacks that he had in certain scenes depending on what he was going for, but it was to me it was so well done. You know, whose shoulder are they shooting over?
Yeah.
You
and
know?
even some moving shots where almost like people were in motion, but the camera was in motion as well. You know, there was a couple of those too that were really, really good. And then when Indiana Jones gets out of the cave, you know, you meet Belloc for the first time, and he's good. And then when they're chasing him, you know, which is a great chase scene. However, there is that one scene where they show Indiana Jones running.
Oh,
and then the tribe's
right
behind him.
Yeah.
But then they do an overhead shot, and it looks like a much greater distance. And then shortly thereafter, they caught up to him again. You know, but sometimes you just see these little things. But one of the things I was explaining to Chris is that I don't feel like this movie takes place in the real world. It's not presented as if this is what really would have happened if this was happening. Because the movie itself, the origin of the movie, for the most part, is basically, you know, it's harkening back to the days of the serials from, I almost want to say the 30s or the 40s, you know, where they were, you know, and those were like kind of low budget cliffhanger type things. You know, these were the things that were shown in between movies. You know, whether it was the Lone Ranger or Superman or, you know, there was a gazillion of them, you know, and they were all, you know, adventurous, and, you know, the action was a little exaggerated, you know, and I feel like this movie is that, you know, it's an adventure film, and it's a lot of things seem like it could have never happened that way,
right.
But that's what the movie is. The movie is this crazy offbeat adventure that is not meant to be, I think, analyze and say, okay, that would never happen, that would never happen.
And that was George, though, too, because George grew up on those serials, and that was one of the reasons why he wrote Star Wars the way he did. And the same thing when he created Indiana. It was, again, I think the serials for him were such a big influence on his life.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think the movie is like, you know, some people might say the movie is a little, you know, corny or dated, or, you know, it's, you know, it doesn't make sense, and it's like, you know, it's not taking itself too seriously. But it's not throwing all logic away either. You know, it definitely you know, it's not completely off the wall.
No, I think it's logic within its own world.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's slightly off reality, and that's how you get away with everything that happens in the film, because it's all presented in that consistent style of how things, you know,
well, it was like one thing led to the next.
You know, these chain reaction type thing. You know, these. You know, all these chain reaction type scenarios were built to create suspense, you know, in the sequence of events, and that's exactly what they did in these serials back in the day, where it's like this led to this, and then, oh my God, are they going to escape? Are they going to escape? But back in the day, the serial you had to wait till the next week to see what happened.
Right.
But in here, you get the whole entire film.
Well, you know, the one thing that George loves to do is he always has these different landscapes throughout his films. You know, he was very famous for doing that with the Star Wars films, and he does that with Indy too, because you go from the jungle to the city life, you know, to the school life in which I believe is supposed to be New York, to Nepal, to Cairo, to Egypt,
and then into the desert.
You know, and then at the end when they go to that island, which we think was actually shot in Hawaii.
Yeah, because
that was one of the credits.
Yeah, this is why you stay to watch the credits, because you get so much interesting at it. But the film was filmed on location in Tunisia, Hawaii. You know, Hawaii might have been the jungle. No, Peru.
Peru was probably
yeah. Peru, Tunisia, Peru, and Hawaii, and then of course I think
Elstree Studios in England.
Yeah, on
the film lot.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think that last scene where they open up the Ark, that island that they're filming, I'm pretty sure that's got to be Hawaii.
Yeah.
But just, you know, so interesting, the different, you know, textures and between the jungle, the coldness and the snow of Nepal, and then you get to the desert. Just all these different cool landscapes that you really feel like you went on an adventure, because it's all these different locations that you're going to. It's not city, right? You know, it's completely broken up.
And you know how, you know, I'll usually say, you know, oh, if only they made this film in black and white, it might have been better. To me, I disagree. This is a film that is better in color. Even though it doesn't have a very wide palette, because it's a lot of browns and and sand, like it's almost like sand,
because a lot of the film takes place
sandy
when you're over
yellowish.
there. Yeah.
There's a decent amount of green too and earth colors, but it I think color works well for this film. I think it this is a movie that, to me, I mean, you could have filmed it in black and white, I'm sure, but I think it looked better in color. So like I said, so I'm not one of these people like color's the devil. Color in black and white are good.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're making.
And
For me, this movie was a good choice of color.
There's some nice, fun little tidbits with this. Some behind the scenes when Indy and Sala are taking the Ark out of its casing, when they're lifting it up, in the hieroglyphics. Yeah. There's a picture of R2 and 3PO.
Well, there's a couple in that scene, and some of them were easier to spot than the others. I think the one where when they're lifting the cover off,
it's on the post.
It's on the post. There's when he's lifting the cover, I want to say big stone.
The stone cover.
That we both came to the conclusion that it would be.
I don't think
they
I
wouldn't be
think
able to lift it.
That stone piece was probably a few 100 pounds, if not more.
Because it was like
it's solid stone,
like stone, concrete.
There's no way the two of those guys lift that thing up.
But if you're watching the scene to the left, which would be, I think, to Indiana Jones's right, because he's facing you, there's a column there with all hieroglyphics and etchings in there. And there's a small caricature of what is supposed to be C-3PO and R2-D2. That's pretty interesting. And the other Star Wars reference,
we believe, is on the plane when they're leaving
in the beginning.
In the beginning of the film, when Indy's leaving with that little prop plane that he's getting on,
like a water plane.
Yeah. So the engravings, the identification tag on the plane is OB CPO, right?
Yeah. So Obi-Wan Kenobi and C-3PO.
Right. So that's to us, that's like a nice little nod.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I had never noticed that until
I never noticed. I knew about R2 and 3PO. I never noticed the tag on the plane until tonight when we watched it.
Yeah, well, at one point, I think I went online or whatever just to find all the Easter eggs for Raiders of the Lost of a lot of films, and then I really got into all the identifications and stuff in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and right, the plane they mentioned, and that's obvious, and the one on the post is obvious, but there is another hieroglyphic in there that you mentioned, and that is much harder to spot because I think it's further away.
It's in a almost like shaded portion because it's as they're moving.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I think if you knew where to look and you had it in high def and you could freeze frame it,
I think you'd find it. Yeah, but the other cool thing too is, not a lot of people know this, when Indy goes to fight the big swordsman in the middle of Cairo, when he's trying to find Marion, the swordsman that whips out the sword and starts doing that whole thing.
Yeah, it's almost like the crowd parts.
Yeah, the crowd parts ways.
Indiana turns around and all of a sudden there's this big guy there.
And you think you're going to have this huge sword fight. And it was originally scripted for that Indy was going to have that. But when they went to go film that scene, Harrison was very ill. He had over 100-degree fever. There was no way that he could film the scene. But they had to get the scene done. So Spielberg's like, he goes to George, he's like, how are we going to do the scene? Harrison can't fight. He can barely stand up.
And if you look at him in the scene,
he
doesn't look good.
He doesn't look well at all. He looks very like sweaty.
And you would never notice that unless you knew this story.
Right.
And you because I remember, especially this viewing, purposely looking at him to see what kind of state, and he looks bad. He looks bad.
And so basically what George ended up doing was he just said, how about he just pulls his gun out and shoots him? Like, he's like, wouldn't that be funny? He's like, he doesn't fight him, he just pulls his gun out. Yeah. And that's exactly what they ended up doing. And to me, I thought that scene worked perfectly like that. To me, it added a little bit of humor into that scene. It's what I feel Indy would do
Yeah.
at that point in time with the character. So
You know, it's
that
like-
kind of all that went well.
It's like a twist in that old joke, who brings a sword to a gunfight,
Right.
Yeah. And that was always a big crowd pleaser moment. Like when that happens, and I remember seeing that for the first time. Like the crowd went, bananas. You got to realize, some of these movies that you watch, you've seen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But there was a time when you saw it for the first time and you didn't know what was coming.
Right.
And it's hard to think back, try to imagine yourself watching Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time and not knowing what's going to happen.
Right. You see this big, huge guy with a sword that he whips out, and he's like, "Oh my God!" And he's going to have to fight him.
Yeah. Or where the movie's going to end. You don't know. Like, what? Oh my God! What's going to happen?
Right.
How does this movie end? I can't wait.
Yeah.
Now you watch it, you know where it's going.
Or when they get into that. So when we saw this episode tonight, when we saw this last episode, when we saw this movie, the scene when Indy goes down into the Well of Souls, and he drops down, and the Cobra comes up. In the old VHS tapes
And theatrical release.
And theatrical release, if you watched it, there is a pane of glass that's in between Indy and the Cobra, and it's you can notice it.
Right, because these are not CGI snakes.
Exactly.
These are
it's
real
all
snakes.
real, so you can actually see it. But with all the digital releases between DVD and Blu-ray,
Apparently they've managed to erase it.
they've been able to kind of clean that up and take that out. And you can no longer see it. So when we were watching it, I was telling him, I was like, "Oh, I wonder what they're going to play."
He said, I wonder what version this is. And I said, "What does that mean?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well," and then you couldn't see it. He goes, "This is the."
It's the newer. It's like the one that's been cleaned up, the digital version.
So I'm actually curious as to what other changes there are between this. I don't know that anything would rise to the level that they did with DT, where they swapped out the guns with walkie-talkies, which to me was ridiculous. But in this case, it may be just like, just getting rid of.
I think it might have been like hiding things.
Yeah, getting rid of the things that some people would consider to be mistakes.
Right. Yeah, because I think that comes back again in another scene with the snake, and there's still like the pane of glass there.
Yeah, it could be.
Later on, I think especially like with Karen Allen, when she falls down, the same thing happens. But
it's interesting though. Which would you prefer to watch? The original theatrical version where you can see it, or the cleaned up version where you can't?
I mean, I find it fun when you know those things. Like if you're the person on the inside that knows, hey, you know what, we hid this here, we did this, and you can, you'll point it out and you'll see it, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And when you're watching these newer versions, you look for that. So to me, it's kind of, it's fun to point that out to people that maybe don't even know. Like, oh, listen, this is the newer version, but the old version, it had this where this is how they filmed it because they had to protect the actors. So, I don't know. I think either way for me, I'm fine. I mean, listen, I always like to watch the original versions for the most part, with a few exceptions.
Right, because right now you have a scenario with Star Wars: A New Hope, where there's some guy out there that puts together as close as possible, reconstructing the closest original theatrical version of Star Wars, which is almost impossible to buy now anywhere.
You can't.
Yeah, you actually.
I mean, the only version that you have is through one of the DVD releases. They put out the original cuts, but even those are based on. They're based on a. They're not based on the original prints.
Right.
Like the original. Okay. It's not based on the original masters. It's based on like a cut of a cut. So it's still not like crystal clear as it could be.
So from a purist standpoint, I could see where, that's appealing, because you almost want to you want to see what people saw in the theaters for the first time.
Right.
I don't know that I like the edited version, because I think even now if you when you buy I think the original Star Trek TV show on DVD, I think they're all cleaned up versions because it's, Star Trek was in the late 60s,
But
and
what's
it's
your
obvious.
But what's your definition of cleaned up version?
Everything looks crisp.
Because this is a conversation for another day too. Because
Yeah.
I think your definitions of things when it comes to like HD and Blu-ray.
Well, no, this is not an HD. Like the planets they made the planets look like as if they were filming it today. Like if they were doing Star Trek today, they made everything that looked cheesy. They swapped it out with like cleaner, sharper images.
Well, that's different.
Yeah, and
that's different. That's altering what was actually filmed.
I want to see the original. I want to
Yeah.
see the original. Because I think in all of these cases, the original stand on its own. The original Star Wars that was released had the impact and the livability. It wasn't like everyone was like, oh, this would be great, but I wish somebody would clean it up. Like nobody said that.
Right.
All these original things. E.T. was huge. Even people with the guns, like Raiders of the Lost Ark was huge, even with the glass.
But the difference with the ET that you're talking about is they actually went in and they put more scenes in. So it wasn't just that they changed the shotguns for the walkie-talkies.
Oh, okay.
They actually added scenes into the film.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what made it the special edition, whatever they ended up calling it.
Gotcha.
When they re-released it, I think that was in 2000 or 2001 when that came out.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's even multiple editions of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's the theatrical release, then there's a special edition, and then there's one that has everything.
But when it comes to Indiana Jones, I don't think they added scenes. But all they ended up doing was cleaning up some of the effects that at the time they didn't have the technology for, but they do now to just make it more seamless. And I don't think I have too much of a problem with that. I can because I know what the original was.
But you could take that too far, because you could use that logic on any film that's been made in the past 100 years and say, oh, wouldn't it be nice to go back to, Gone with the Wind and clean it up a bit?
Well, to me, it's all a matter of.
I don't know that I would want to do that.
But it's all, you know what though? But it's up to it. That to me, that's whatever the director's vision is.
Yeah.
That's up to the director.
Yeah.
Because it's their film.
Now,
it's different if it's like the studio's looking for a cash grab. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this and then we'll have another version and we can release it and people are going to buy it? To me, that's a cash grab. That's not right. But if Spielberg was like, you know what? I never got to finish this scene. I want to do something with this, and somehow we'll put it out in a special edition. To me, that's different because he's trying to add something to complete his vision that he wasn't able to do when he originally filmed it, because just for whatever reason the technology wasn't there, time wasn't there. So to me, that's a very director specific, and as a fan, you either continue to watch the version you grew up with and you love. For example, for Star Wars is a great example, because you have the original cuts and all those people that want those original cuts because that's what they grew up with, that's what they want on VHS for so many years, but they want the higher quality. Or do you just continue to deal with the special editions because that's what they give you?
Yeah, and it just got to be careful, because it can be a slippery slope, because at some point you're going to get somebody who has the power to do things and doesn't have the ethical purity to not know where the line should be drawn.
Well,
there is a line there, and when someone in power crosses the line and doesn't even know it, like, then they're making a bad decision. But because they have the power to do it, that they say that justifies it.
I just think with this example, I think it's completely different. I think they just went back and they touched up some of the special effects, which to me does not deter from the film at all. I don't think it brings it down at all. I think it cleaned it up to the point where now you don't even notice it. The majority of people probably don't even notice. I mean, you got to talk about your general movie audience goers that have no clue that was even done to the films, because they didn't notice it the first time around when they saw it.
Right, that could be.
For most of the people that are in the know, that to me, that's a much smaller percentage in the population than the people than your general audience viewer that's going to the movies. Of course, we're probably going to be more of the sticklers than those people.
Right.
But to me, for them, I don't think they care, and I don't even think they notice.
Right. Now, one of the things I noticed in the credits, which I don't know that I was acutely aware of, is Industrial Light and Magic have a credit in the film.
Yep.
And I was like, and you were just like, of course. And I was like, well, when was Industrial Light and Magic created?
George started ILM with the New Hope. Like, I think he started up the FX company then.
Does ILM have a credit in Star Wars?
I don't know if it has a credit in A New Hope. I'm sure by Empire Strikes Back it does.
Okay. So it's probably at the
I think it was like
inception.
It was in its infancy
Yeah.
and inception when A New Hope came out, because he had to create all of that all that special effects technology.
Yeah, so that was actually interesting to see.
If you go and look at the special edition now for A New Hope, absolutely ILM is credited with that because they created and added scenes for it.
Oh, okay.
But if you go back to the original theatrical cut, I would have to watch that and see if ILM gets credit for that. But I mean, this is just such a fun film. I think the whole religious tone to it always intrigued me. The what is the Ark of the Covenant? What's in it? These broken tablets that Moses came and smashed down. How they explain that and they go through all that, I think is very interesting. What power does that truly have? Indy's always the skeptic. He's the skeptic, but he does have some belief. And then, of course, you see a little bit more in The Last Crusade because of his father and why he has some of those beliefs.
And I'm actually glad that they went with the Ark of the Covenant in this movie because, in this type of movie, the obvious choice is to go with the Holy Grail. Like the end-all, be-all archaeological find that anybody would ever think of is, the Holy Grail, the Cup of Christ. But going with the Ark of the Covenant to me is, it was a bolder choice. I think it's certainly a less known artifact. I don't even know when I was a kid that I had even heard of the Ark of the Covenant, and I'm assuming it's not made up. Like I think
there is some type of ark. I think
that's something that is pulled from Christian, lore. Yeah. I don't think it's completely fabricated for the film.
But I think it's interesting because when they go through the whole how the ark was made with from the Hebrews, and it was in Jerusalem, and then it got raided or moved, and it's like they don't explain how, they don't know.
Right. Now some of that stuff might be made up, and that's fine, because I don't think there actually is a staff of Ra. I think all that stuff. I think they built some mythology around it, but it was a cool concept because I can tell you when they show the scene when he's explaining to the guys, one of the guys who I think looks like Ned Beatty, but it's not him. When they pull out the book and they show him the picture, that actually is a pretty powerful scene.
Just because you don't know, because people from those times, how could they explain what they can explain? They couldn't explain what that power was, whether via science or some type of faith or myth. So these rays of light that are coming out in Indy's lightning, power of God.
Now keep in mind, this is 1936. So science is not where it was then, where it is today.
Of course.
Where so many things have been explained away and this and that. Not that we're dealing with people that think the wind is the gods whistle.
Right. There was a god for everything.
Right. But you're dealing with a less scientifically aware group, because you realize, okay, this is 3 years before Orson Welles fooled everybody into thinking the Martians were landing. And I can tell you right now, there were people that thought the War of the Worlds was really happening. You know what I mean? My grandmother was one of them. My grandmother was hiding the kids underneath the kitchen table. It's like, so it's like, people got to realize that, movies that take place many decades before current day, it's a completely different mindset and level of technology.
But I always found that interesting with this film, and especially the end scene when Indy knows, he somehow figures out, don't open your eyes.
This was not meant for man's eyes,
right?
And if you open them, you're gonna pay for it,
right? It's kind of like one of those things where you are not supposed to witness the power of God.
Yeah,
and if you do, the price of seeing that is your life.
Yeah,
you pay for it with your life, and I always found that somewhat interesting, and the fact that Indy and Marion go unharmed just because they kept their eyes shut the entire time. was always interesting.
Yeah, no, it was. And sometimes you just watch some of these movies, and it's like you have questions, and it's like you don't know if you'd ever get the answer, or if anybody knows the answer, or if there even is an answer.
Right? Is it left up to interpretation?
Well, because the ultimate example of that is Pulp Fiction. What's in the suitcase?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
Number one question.
Now this is nowhere near that level, but when Belloc and Marion.
Yeah.
Marion. When Belloc and Marion are in the tent, in Cairo, and they're drinking, Belloc pulls out, a bottle of something that's, his family label.
Yes.
And, me and Chris are sitting there going like, I wonder what they're drinking. Like what type of, it's not wine, it's not beer. It's definitely hard liquor of some kind. But it's clear. And the label is not in English.
It's not easily viewed.
It's clear. And we're like, is it vodka? Is it gin? Is it something
like a
else?
white rum?
Exactly. Is it a light rum?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think he's French.
Right.
So it's like, is that a clue? And you just want to sit there and say, what is Belloc drinking?
Yes.
Google it and what's the answer? And you know what? It probably doesn't matter, but I'm curious if there is an actual answer to that question. What he is drinking. Just one of those mysteries.
But I mean, overall, to me, this movie still holds up. You were talking about that before, like a film like this from 1981.
81.
Does this still hold up? I think
it absolutely does.
The practical effects,
just as much fun now as it was then.
I mean, I was telling John the scene when the truck that Indy thinks Marion's in tips over and explodes, and you see Indy turning away and kind of shielding himself from the blast. Like that's a real effect. Like that was a practical effect. They blew up a truck.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that.
I think all those explosions, like when they blew up the plane and the tower,
like all that stuff to me was
just
it's so well done. I mean, obviously, listen, if anyone who's ever been to Hollywood Studios in Disney World or Disneyland knows they do this stunt every single day there, multiple times, where they blow this stuff up. But it's really cool to see those effects, and I think it really holds up so well in this film. And just from start to finish, with the music, the characters, there's so much to like about this film. I'm sure people still nitpick stuff. One of the best nitpicks, in my opinion, is from The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, what's that?
When Sheldon's girlfriend, Amy, watches Raiders of the Lost Ark with him. And Sheldon gets so excited to watch this with her. And she goes and tells him, she's like, what did he really do? She's like, Indy did nothing. Like, he was not a pivotal person in this film whatsoever. The Nazis would have eventually, they basically ended up where they would have, whether he interfered or not, because eventually they would have found the Ark, they would have opened it, and they all would have died anyway.
Right. Well, would they have found the Ark? Would they have just dug up the entire area until they found it?
I think eventually they would have dug it up. They had the manpower. I think eventually they would have dug and found it.
Maybe not, because I don't think they were on unlimited time. At the end of the day, they're getting their orders from the Fuhrer, and at some point, Hitler's going to say, it's not there, come home, go look for something else.
I don't know. Maybe if he was so obsessed.
There's going to be a telegram from the home base saying, "Time to come home. You've wasted enough time here."
Right.
And they don't want to go, but they're going to get orders to go.
But they also weren't that far off from where they were digging, and eventually
they
found out
weren't.
where they were digging, it wasn't going to be the right spot.
So interestingly enough, when Indiana Jones and his group start that digging, you see all those clouds in the background. It reminded me a little bit of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was 4 years earlier, when the clouds were coming up to, what do you call it, Devil's Mountain, whatever you call it.
Yeah, Devil's Peak or
something like that.
Yeah.
The clouds when the aliens were coming in. And then even when they were doing, at the end, where they were going to almost like a special place to unveil the Ark, they had these lights in a row. It reminded me very much of, again, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, of when they were when they set up that place, to meet with the aliens, where they had like the runway and the light, it reminded me, like, not, well, I mean, it's his own, he made both movies. He's not stealing, he's not copying from anybody, but visually it reminded me of that. Not that it was like, a copy, but when I was
But that could have been his own toss into for like his own nostalgia that he threw in there, his little Easter egg.
Now, one thing I would the scene where they finally escape from the tomb, when they push the rock out and they go to the plane and that big guy comes out, like that's a scene that's really kind of funny, because it's almost like it comes out of nowhere. Like this guy that comes out, the big muscle guy,
German,
he's not interested in what's happening. Like he's not there. Oh, I found Indiana Jones, I got to capture him. He's just like,
he just wants to fight.
There's a guy out there fighting, punching out Germans. He's like, oh, let's see what we can do. It really is a funny departure. It's a great scene, because he's just out there. No matter, he's always like, come on. It's really kind of funny. So incidentally, to sidebar a little bit, if you've ever heard of the fan film that these kids made, there's a bunch of kids made a shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark, over the course of like 7 years, which I have yet to see that film. It's not easy to find, I think, but I saw a documentary on that film, that was made within the last couple of years, and what it was half of it was all the guys talking about making the film. And the other half was basically because what happened was there was one scene from that film that they never did because it was too complicated. And it was that scene in the airstrip where, the plane and the fight and all that. And the other half of the movie was them getting together as adults and doing that scene. And these guys weren't rich and famous. This movie didn't make them, superstars. They all had their own jobs and problems, this and that, and they decided to get together, and they had donations from a ton of people and backers. Like, and one guy had to take like 2 weeks off from his job. He almost got fired. And they actually wound up filming that scene as adults and injected it. I guess assuming they injected it into the footage that they had. Yeah. So at some point you could actually go and watch. And apparently it's probably one of the greatest fan films of all time, I would say, and I forget what it's called. I think it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark, an adaptation or something like that. But I would say that is in the highest echelons of fan films, along with, I think, maybe Hardware Wars, which was the very, very first Star Wars fan film, which is great. That's just so much fun. Like that came out. I think Hardware Wars came out before Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's how old it is. That's a lot of fun.
That's pretty funny. So listen, I'm happy that we got to do this.
Well, and just to talk about the end of Raiders, how the movie ends. So the way the movie ends is that they got the Ark, and the government has it, and they put it in a box, and they roll it into some storehouse.
It's Area 51.
Is it? How do we know it's Area 51? Is that just a theory?
I think it was a guess, and then it's confirmed in.
Oh, it's confirmed in
the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Area 51.
So the end of that movie is very. I want to say it's an homage or a throwback to how Citizen Kane ends, where the giant warehouse and something of importance is buried in there.
Rosebud.
Yeah, Rosebud. So it has a. Yeah, the ending is very much
but I remember when I first saw
really
that warehouse at the end, I'm looking at all those crates, and I love a good conspiracy theory. I'm just looking at all these cool crates and what's in these.
Yeah, and now granted, it's not all Arks of the Covenant. It's not all giant things of mystical power.
It's not all alien.
It's just
spaceships.
All it's almost inconceivable. It's so much stuff.
Right.
And
they just get their hands on.
Does anybody even know what's in there? This is just where everything goes.
Well, I mean, they are supposed to do a 5th indie film, and I think it would be really interesting if they. See, unfortunately, they used that scene already in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Whereas if they could have done something like a list of artifacts that they have to get from that storage unit. I thought that would have been interesting. Instead of they have to, they get the crashing from Roswell or whatever they deemed the crashing from in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and they use that. But at least they did bring back the warehouse. And one of the cases cracks. You see the Ark of the Covenant slightly. It's exposed, like the corner of it's exposed.
And I think I definitely want to give props to the monkey in the movie.
Very well trained.
Because today that movie that monkey, that entire monkey performance would be CG, and they would have him doing everything. So like having a CG monkey do a Heil Hitler is nothing compared to a real monkey
able to do it.
Being doing that in the scene.
Yeah.
And however they got him to do that, it's like you got to sit there and say this is a real monkey doing all this stuff and all these shots.
To train
and that's a great monkey.
Yeah.
And when he dies, that's actually a really that was a really good scene. Like with the when Indiana Jones throws the date up in the air and it goes in slow motion and then the hand comes out. And that was a really cool scene back in the day. Seeing that for the first time.
Yeah.
Overall, this is absolutely one of my all-time favorite films.
I think for both of us, it's in both of our top 10s.
It's high in my top 10. It's probably like number 5 or number 6, or at least number 7. And it's I never get tired of it.
No,
no,
you're absolutely right. Like I never get tired of watching this film.
I'll be honest with you. Any movie in your top 10, you've probably seen dozens upon dozens of times, and you never get tired of it. That's why you like it. And I can say that for almost every film in my top 10. It's like, well, I gotta say that for almost every film in my top 100. But yeah, like that's a movie you could watch over and over and over again. And it's as crazy as it sounds. I'm sure there are people out there that have never seen it for one reason or another. And that to me is just insane. Because Spielberg, I think, is one of the greatest directors of all time, and certainly one of the greatest directors of the past 30, 40 years. Yeah. I mean, he got his start in the 70s, which was like the second golden age of cinema.
Yeah.
But
he started touting off some big hits.
Yeah, and even in later times, like not that I would consider Ready Player One a classic, but I think it was
so enjoyable.
But it was a really good, enjoyable movie that, in the hands of somebody else, would have been a much lesser film.
Yeah.
He knows how to do things right. And to me, I think you can argue about his masterpieces, but like to me, his masterpieces are Jaws, Schindler's List, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and E.T.
E.T.
I think those 5 films you could argue endlessly. I don't know that E.T. would ever hold.
So many.
I don't know that E.T. would ever hold the best one of all time, but E.T.
I still talk about it. I mean, my God, there's Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan.
One of
the best, in my opinion, one of the best war movies ever made.
Too.
He has such a library of films,
right? And it's all not the same film over and over again.
They're so different,
and they're all different genres. Because I don't know. Jaws is a thriller. Close Encounters is sci-fi.
Yeah.
Not for nothing, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is one of the absolute best science fiction films ever made.
Yeah. Remember he did AI, which is an interesting film too.
AI is,
and that's like depending on who you talk to, that's a hit or miss. But he has done some really, really great
AI is
films.
sci-fi. Raiders of the Lost Ark is just adventure, and I always tell Chris.
Didn't he do Catch Me If You Can?
Oh yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good movie too. That's almost like a suspense movie.
Yeah.
But I always told Chris, I said, to me, one of the greatest adventure movies of all time is Gunga Din from 1939, and he's got to watch it because I can tell you right now, Gunga Din is on par with Gunga Din is a 4-star movie on par with almost anything, and it's one of the greatest adventure films of all time.
Pretty fun.
So we're gonna have to watch that too one day.
So I think that's going to be it for episode 35.
I think so.
All right.
I'm going to finish my citrus beer.
Guys, we hope you stuck around for this whole thing. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have not seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, do yourself a favor. Go watch that movie.
And if you're stuck at home and you have access to a drive-in theater, a drive-in movie, I would recommend you do it.
Go
And,
support your local.
Yeah, and take
Go
a chance.
support
See
your
something
local.
that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
The Gateway has been showing movies from
All
30s,
different eras.
40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up to today. It's
Yep.
it's like and I like that diversity. It's not just the
It's
same
not, it's
stuff.
not one era.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I would
definitely.
say, when I went to see Sunset Boulevard, there was maybe 15, 16 cars. But when we went to the Raiders today,
Yeah. And like I told you, like
there was
I
like
think that,
50.
I think that movie was a very specific niche of people that would go and see that. Where Raiders, you're reaching a wider audience.
We actually bought the tickets only like 2 or 3 days ago, and we were actually surprised. I was like, wow, I can't believe it's not sold out.
I think after I bought it, it became sold out very quickly.
Yeah, because not for nothing, you can only fit so many cars in that parking lot.
Yes.
You can't just keep selling forever. So yeah,
But,
we got there.
we're
We're
gonna
gonna totally go back.
We're gonna keep looking out for drive-ins as well as our own little projection screen that we're gonna do outside as well.
Yeah,
So we'll get to do some movies here as well. But guys, I hope you enjoy. Keep watching movies. We
Yep.
will talk about it as much as we can. We'll
Yep.
On to the next episode later this week, hopefully.
which will be
We're doing the next one is going to be an in-depth review of Batman vs Superman, the
Superman.
Ultimate Edition.
right another retro, and that's fine.
All right.
All
So
right.
guys, enjoy the rest of the night.
Take care.
Take care.